everyone to Heart Snuggles. We hope you're having the most amazing day. And I brought a lovely men's coach on, so go ahead and tell them who you are.
Yeah, Lexi, I appreciate you inviting me on. Hey, everyone, my name is Griffin Gervais. I am a mindset and men's coach. I was a former educator turned life coach, mindset coach, men's coach. So I've been doing that full time for just a little while now and really have enjoyed the journey in the process to where I am. So, Lexi, I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much. And thank you for stepping into this work. It makes such a big difference. And it's exciting that it's new for you too. I think that's a great place to be because a lot of people often don't chat when they're in the new phases. And it's like so many of us want to do it, but then it's like we only hear from experts. It's kind of intimidating. So, anyways, thank you for being here.
Yeah, of
And
course.
the question of the podcast is, what was the last random act of kindness someone did for you?
Oh man, well, my birthday was this past weekend, and my girlfriend went all out, and just spoiled me to death with love and travel and adventure. And so, I mean, that's on the forefront of my mind right now. So that was the most recent thing that someone's done.
Beautiful. That sounds like such a lovely way, and happy belated.
Thank you.
Yeah, so tell us your journey of like getting into men's work and how has being a man been for you and in your childhood and whatnot.
that's layered, Lexi.
I like to go deep.
Going right in, yeah. Um, wow. Well, I'll try to kind of blend those two together. I grew up in Connecticut, a small suburb in Connecticut, and had your pretty like normal, and for the listeners, I'm doing air quotes, normal life. Great household, small community, nothing that kind of people are like, oh, this event happened or something like that. Like I just kind of went through life. And what ended up happening was I went off to college. I did that. I went and graduated with a degree in education, went straight to New York City where I became a classroom teacher. I taught in New York City for 5 years, transitioned to administration while also really having a foundation of relationships. Relationships were the core for me. I never really cared about teaching content in academics. Like that was kind of a way in which some of it was delivered, but really it was about growth mindset. It was about perseverance. It was about empathy. It was about building all of those soft skills that people talk about, to really have students tap into themselves and like believe they can do anything that they put their minds to. So heading into being an administrator, that was kind of my big focus. And at that point, there was language being put around it, and it was social emotional learning, and it was developing your emotional intelligence, developing empathy, developing compassion, developing problem solving, growth mindset, all these different sort of skills. And it just spoke to me so deeply, and it was really cool. And my entry point with all this was through emotions. And I did some work with the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence. They have a program that gets embedded in schools, and I was kind of spearheading that integration into schools. And I was learning so much about emotions, and I thought I was emotionally intelligent, and there was just so much that I was like stepping back and looking at my own life and being like, wow, I don't have any of this. And what it did, Lexi, was it created the space for me to just reflect and to process and to really look at my journey. And I talked about it at the beginning, like there was no major events. There was nothing that stuck out. I just kind of went through life, but that was the problem, Lexi. I just went through life. I was in a point where I checked boxes. I went to school. I went to grad school. I got a job. I was in relationships. I was just doing all of these things. And I hit a point in life where I was doing this work to be implemented in schools. And I was really reflecting and figuring out how much of a shield I was holding, how much protection I was giving myself, how much I wasn't truly honoring and showing up the way that I wanted to be. And that's when I realized that there needed to be a change. I needed to kind of take this work it was one of those things too. I kind of felt like an imposter. We were talking with teachers to put it in front of children about all this stuff, yet I wasn't living it. I was telling kids to live their dreams, and I was like, I'm not living my dream right now. And I loved my career. I loved being in education. It served so much of what I do now. It just wasn't serving me anymore in that capacity. And so the work really towards going to men sat with me when I really developed the purest form of confidence, when I developed my most authentic form of who I am. And it was because I was doing all of these things. I was starting to check in with myself. I was starting to listen to the internal dialogue rather than the external pieces. And so when I saw that and realized that and started having conversations with men, I started realizing all of the societal pressures, all the things that get put on us. I grew up in sports, and just what sports did for me, right? It did a lot to help me develop certain skills, but I'm still processing how to unlearn some of those other skills. And so, that's where it just really spoke to speaking to men and working on their mindset and helping them develop their emotions and show them that weakness is not bad and weakness doesn't exist. And it's about being vulnerable and open. That's kind of my journey from the beginning to where I am now in the work that I do.
That's incredible journey. And I love that too. Like there's this huge fascination or I don't know the word, but like draw towards the hero story of like going through this dramatic event and then coming out. And it's like, there's so many of us that haven't had that. And so we don't even feel like our experiences are valid. So I think that's another great thing that you're coming from. It's like, we don't, like to do this work or to be a coach or whatever, like you don't have to go through the most traumatic thing to have a voice. So
yeah, I think for me, what it was, and I've talked about this before, and obviously your audience is new to me, but it was this waking up every day with knowing that there was more, but I wasn't honoring it. I was creating every excuse. I was boxing myself in, just being like, well, this is life. And got to a point where I was like, what am I doing? like this is life. Like it's fun. It's energizing. It should be fulfilling. Like you should go after it. And that's what I started the steps to do. So that's kind of really what led to the transition.
Yeah, it's so great. And just to circle back a little bit, you were talking about some things you're unlearning from sports. And I think this is a big thing that a lot of men go through. And so what are some of the things that what does that look like for you?
I think the big thing is kind of the suck it up mentality. I learned so much in terms of like brotherhood and community and having each other's back and kind of collaboration and all of those things in terms of sport. I played basketball and I played soccer, so all team sports, nothing individualized. But there also was so much of this pressure of like, you got to be on, you got to be performing, you got to like, it doesn't matter. I don't care what happened. I don't care like what's going on in your world. It doesn't matter. When you step on the field, you got to show up. And I believe that to a certain extent in terms of detaching, compartmentalizing, but I didn't have the tools around that. And no one taught me the tools around that. And no one taught our team around the tools around that. And no one in school was teaching us how to handle these things. It was basically like, hey, how you're feeling right now, just push it further. No, it's still there. Keep pushing. And what it created was almost, like, it was almost like this Coke bottle of like, the more you shake it up, like you want to burst. And I remember playing just on different teams with people who would like act out in aggression or get in like fights playing soccer or basketball or all these things. And like, I wonder how much of that attributed to just there was no healthy resource or outlet for emotions and feelings to come up. And I think that was the biggest thing, because I was taught that, I was doing that, and then we were succeeding. So we were winning games, winning tournaments, winning titles, like all of these things. And so I think I started to really program within myself, like, oh, it's okay. Like those things don't matter. Just push, because externally you're still succeeding. Things are still going well. And that translated to life. It translated to relationships. It translated to careers where I kind of would get in something and I'd be like, well, I'm here now. I'm kind of in it. And those things that would come up, I would just push down to be like, oh no, it's not worth it. Or no, like I would devalue myself, or just start creating doubt around like, it doesn't really matter. And that, I think a lot of that attributed to the mindset that was instilled playing sports. Because, and I will say, and Lexi, I don't know your background or anything around this, but I think sports now is really trending in a positive light of balancing both, and giving people outlet. And I think a lot of professionals are doing a good job of raising awareness around these conversations with mental health and emotions. But back then, no one had tools. I'm in my 30s right now, so when I was in high school in 2000 and 2005, like it was just don't talk about it, don't talk about it. So I think that was the biggest thing that I'm still currently working on learning.
Yeah, that's a huge one. And I think that's so popularized in the men's world is just like the suck it up, and just so focused on winning that nothing else matters, and like success in
Yeah.
like a material way, or a validation way. And so I think that's powerful to take those steps to unlearn it and to teach other men how to do so as well.
Yeah, and if what I was talking about was attaching myself to results. I was attaching myself to the act of winning, or what a goal or what something represented, and then realizing like the journey doesn't matter because I got there. But really, it was about the journey that mattered, and who I was and how I was evolving, and that's a lot of the work I do now. And I had to personally go through and continue to go through and create things for myself to stay in that certain lens of, it's about the internal work, and it's about who you want to be, and who you want, what you want to create, that really defines it, and you can detach from any outcome or result.
Yeah, detachment is a hard one that we all need to work on, but a powerful one. And the more that we can practice it, the more free we really become.
Mhm.
And so, how another thing we were talking about before the call was the just be, and I think that's such a powerful motto that you live by, and would love for you to explain that.
Yeah. So yeah, I know we were touching base before, but just to expand upon it for the listeners, kind of a little bit along the lines of what I was just saying. A lot of the work that I do with men, a lot of the places I found myself, I think a lot too, in society, we're very goal oriented, results driven, and I think in just my own experience, I think that trends us on a path of progress. But at the same time, what it creates is it creates an attachment to results. And one thing we can't control all the time are results. There's so many factors that can happen in different variables that can change outcomes for us regardless of what we do. And so often I know for myself in situations of life, and specifically men that I've worked with, um, we get in our brain that things need to happen or look a certain way, or this outcome needs to happen a certain way, and when it doesn't, we get frustrated, we get resentful, we just look at it in such a negative lens, because we created so much pressure around it needed to be a certain way. And so when you mention just be it, it's a lot of it. I give clients through doing some work with them the opportunity to just try on a different perspective. Let's say we don't attach to our results. Let's say we just become who we want to be, right? So, for example, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to own multiple businesses that are six figures, let's just throw that out there, right? A lot of times men, and I think a lot of people too, will just start going, and they'll just start reaching and grabbing and trying to do it. And so what they're saying is, right, well, if I have this, I'm going to do this and I become this. And so they're attaching themselves. And shout out to Nick Pags. I know our mutual friend Hannah does work with him too. He talks about this in depth as well. but we live in a world where it's got to come to me. So I have to have it, then I'm going to do it, and then I'll be it. And the world doesn't work like that. Vibrations don't work like that. Energy doesn't flow like that. Energy is not going to come to us if we're sitting there riding the ebbs and flows of what goes on. And so a lot of the work and what I challenge clients to try on in a perspective is actually, let's flip that. Let's say we become that person regardless of what our worlds look like. Let's say we start doing the things that that person would do regardless. And guess what? There's a pretty high likelihood that you're going to have those things after. And you're not going to be driven by the external pieces because you're living it. And so when I talk about just be it, I talk about really breaking down the characteristics of who that person is. So if you're the entrepreneur who has multiple companies, 6 figures, it's not about the attachment to what that is. It is the characteristics that that person functions and operates on. So what are they? Are they risk takers? Are they bold? Are they outgoing? Are they aggressive? Like, what are the characteristics that creates who this person is? And how can you, where you are right now, just start being that? How can you start living each day with characteristics like taking risks, being bold? Maybe that's going to the grocery store and buying someone's groceries. Like, it doesn't need to be in the space of entrepreneurship. It can be life. Like, how do you become that person? Because here's what happens. Our being is in direct alignment with our actions. And so our actions are a byproduct of who we be. And so if we're constantly being at that level of those characteristics, then naturally those are our actions that are going to happen, that are naturally going to lead to us having those things. And at that point, we're not playing this game of attaching ourselves to the ebbs and flows of the world. We're just being. And so if things don't go the way we want to, or they go way better than we want them to, there's no attachment to those outcomes because we're so calibrated and clear and aligned with who we need to be that we just do.
Yes. I think that's so powerful and really key, the being aspect. And it's, you hear this so many times that it's like, you get the thing, you achieve the goal, and then you're like, high for like a little bit. And then all of a sudden you're empty. And it's like, why am I empty? I got the thing I've been achieving for, and it's that remembrance. It's like the thing doesn't bring you what you truly want. It's the feeling.
Yeah. And, I think for men and just women, I think just our society is so driven by the external pieces. Like, when I have that car, or I have that job, or I have that partner, or I live in this part of the world, like, then I'm going to have it. And I would challenge you to really think about, will you? Because what you're telling me right now is you're not enough until those things exist. And I'm a firm believer that we all are enough and we all have everything that we need. And so are you possibly looking at it the wrong way? Is there the possibility that if you internally start thinking about what that needs to look like for you, that you can create fulfillment, you can create joy, you can create abundance, you can create the life that you want right where you are with what you have?
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's really important to constantly remind us, because we're constantly being told the opposite, that we're not whole and enough as we are, and that it's like media is telling us everything is external. So it's really great to have that just amplified and echoed over and over again, because we can't hear that enough, I think.
Yeah, and I will say something, because I know we're speaking about men and men's work, and I think that's where a lot of fear of judgment, fear of vulnerability steps in for men, that because they're doing this men's work, that means that they're weak, that means that they're lacking, that means that they're not enough. And it's the complete opposite. It means that you're whole, it means that you're open, it means that you're vulnerable to step into the world of possibility and expansion, to really embody and authentically be who you want to be, so that you can break through every barrier that you have for yourself. So if you want to be the best husband, if you want to be the best coworker, if you want to be the best boss, if you want to be the best father, whatever that looks like in your world, doing this work can get you on track to start seeing yourself in those spaces and realize that the only thing limiting you is yourself. And you can break through that and you can become that man that you want to be.
Yeah, that's huge, because not asking for help is a big thing that a lot of men struggle with. And And just like therapy in general, like, yeah, that stigma of like, if I'm receiving help, that means there's something wrong with me. And that is like the most backwards thing ever. So that was a really great point to add in there. And just to add on to that, like you were talking about, being okay with taking risks and failing. And so how do you help men with their egos? Like when they do that and like a mistake happens, how do you help them not feel so shattered? Or for yourself, I guess.
Well, Lexi, this is perfect, because regardless of what I do and the work that I do with men and the work that I've done with myself, is it all brings us back to the conversation of emotion. We're always defaulting back to, how does it make you feel? Why did you feel that way? Let's have a conversation about it. And one of the most profound things that I ever heard that just resonated with me is when I was doing the work with Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence. They talk about that every action is driven by an emotion. So I want to pause for a second, and for the listeners, like, I'll say that again and let that sink in. Every action is driven by an emotion. Everything you do on your phone, everything you do when you go to the fridge, your kitchen, with your significant other, emails, phone calls, even just on your own, like every single thing that you do is driven by an internal feeling and emotion. And to answer your question directly, when those things come up, that's where we find ourselves. And we live in a world where men can't express emotions. Emotions are a sign of weakness, but men are also told that they need to be confident. And there's a lot of work that I do with men where our emotions directly correlate to our confidence. And so if we're blocking ourselves from emotionally checking in with how we're feeling, don't you think that's going to really, really affect what happens with our confidence? And so we do a lot of work, and a lot of these men are so powerful in what they do. And they realize all of the stories, all of the programming, all of the societal pressures that have been put on them for years, that now when they're stepping into going after businesses or building relationships, that there are things that they haven't had the space to let go of. And so when we talk about ego, when we talk about all of these things, we really look at it through a lens of, what are you getting? When you're acting through this form of ego and protection or comfort, like, what are you getting in return when you're doing this? And what are you potentially missing out on when you're so focused on protecting yourself or living in your comfort? And these men really start to gain a full awareness of what possibilities lie for them. And they realize that they've been thinking in a certain way. And when they try on something different, that it's light, that it's easy, that it's fun, it's fulfilling. There's no pressure, there's no stress. It's not personal. Because when we react to emotions, right, there's a space. There's a stimulus between the two, and that's a moment to pause. And a lot of times people, and especially men, don't pause. We just go, we react. And when we start building that awareness around your emotions and start talking about how it impacts you and what you're looking for, they start to develop a beautiful relationship with their internal self. And it's really their child. It's really their inner child. It's a lot of the things that they experienced in life that they build a beautiful relationship with.
Yeah, there's so many points that I'm like, yes, I want to go off on. But I think, the reacting versus responding is huge. And it's something like I've been affected by a lot of men with my ex, with my dad, like just like so quick to react and like blow up on me. And then I have like a really freeze trauma response where I just shut down because of the reactions. And so I think that's something, but I mean, I also react to, like, we all do it. But I think that's a really big one that I see a lot in men in specific, and is super important to just notice. And that one little pause like makes such a big difference. And you can help so many relationships by doing that.
Yeah. And right, you said it. We all do it, and a lot of men feel this pressure to protect, to show up, to take care of, to do all of this. And what happens, and this is so funny, I just had a conversation. I have these men's huddles where we all come together and we really process through this stuff, and we do coaching and things in a really like beautiful container where men are going deeper than just surface level bullshit. And we had this conversation the other day about wanting to show up for all the people in our lives and wanting to really be our best. Yet what holds us back is we don't show up for ourselves and we're not doing what we need to for ourselves. And we're not taking the time to pause. We're not taking the time to check in. We're not taking the time to do things. And how much more fulfilling would our days be if we created the space for ourselves, created the tools for ourselves, so that when I was with my partner, when I was at work, I knew exactly who I wanted to show up as. And then I had tools around how to navigate that because, and we're all human beings and life happens. Just because you do this men's work, just because you do any of this work, doesn't mean that your life is just crystal clear from now on. But then you have the ability to check in on the health of those things, the health of your emotions, the health of your relationships, the health of your communication, all the different facets of that make up you. And you have tools to be able to really dive into them.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I love that you have men huddles. It's so good. I love every conversation that's not service level. So it's
me too. That's the beautiful thing about this work is I get so fulfilled just seeing men get to that space, but it's also just so fulfilling for me too, because it's selfish in a sense too, because I crave that, I desire that. And that's what's cool about the work that we do is I get to build that.
Exactly. That's the same. I'm a self-discovery coach. So it's like, I get to do what I love, which is so fun. The one other thing I wanted to say from the last thing was how men take life so seriously. And it's hard for them, I see, to access play because they have to be this protector and the provider and all these things. And, but I'm a super playful person. So with all my guy friends, we play a lot, and I see like everyone has it in them, and when they access it, like, you can see like how much more themselves they are. So how do you help yourself not be so serious?
Man, that's, going back to what you even asked me about sports too. I think that was a big piece of it as well too. I always had that mindset of just going 100%, almost going all out and really getting to a point of burnout because I needed to produce, I needed to hustle, I needed to grind, I needed to provide, and I had to go, 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 go. And no one told me that. Society told me that. And you know what? Being a male and being around other people, I assumed it. And because a lot of people in my life were doing it too. And it was really depleting me. It was really making me irritable. I was becoming resentful of people close to me in my life. And it was just because I wasn't taking the space to be light, to have fun, to enjoy the fruits of what was happening in my world. And so there's a couple things that I do now. One of them is just checking in. So I build a habit with myself of asking, how am I feeling and why am I feeling a certain way? And I'll do that throughout the day if I notice things come up, but I'll also do it like transitioning from places. So if I'm going in work mode to like hanging out with my girl, like I will try to check in so that I'm not carrying anything to her because it's not her responsibility to carry and it's not my responsibility to project. And so in terms of communication and those types of things, I really need to make sure I have a real grip and understanding of where I'm at so that I know what I need to do so I can show up the way that I want to show up in those situations. I'm not always perfect. I get told all the time that I need to be off my phone more because I am working. But another piece too is really trying to create balance. And I had this really powerful conversation, and I think this comes up a lot for men, is this idea of work-life balance. And I don't think there's a particular way for work-life balance. I think work-life balance is however you define work-life balance based on your experiences and what's going on for you. But one thing I knew I needed to do was build in time to actually step away. And that was hard because when I stepped away, I was creating this story of I'm not doing enough. I could be doing more. If I want to be successful, why am I not grinding? Why am I not doing this work? But I also think about time versus energy. I would rather bring 100% energy than do 18 hours of work, right? And is that really going to be my best when I'm there? So I've been working really hard as well of really just defining the spaces for me so that I'm able to disconnect and I'm able to check in to figure out, okay, do I need to pour more time into work? Do I need to pour more time into relationships? Like all of those different areas to really make sure that I'm where I need to be in the current season that I am.
Yes, that's so great because um, I always believe, I'm super into holistic living and we're all so different. There's no formula for anyone, So like such a great reminder. It's like find what works for you, but make sure you're not like continuing the same habits,
Yeah.
and bringing in that balance is really crucial. And those little mini check-ins, I think, are so powerful too, because I often get overwhelmed with like, oh, I need to do an hour worth of something to make it meaningful. But it's like, no, like that mini check-in is so great. And the fact that you're like intentionally trying not to project is so powerful because we're gonna do it, like it's inevitable. But the fact that you're preventing it most of the time is really great. And you're getting to know yourself like, oh, I'm noticing that every time I feel angry, it's because of this. It's not just random, It's like, okay, you get to connect some dots.
Yeah, I love that you said that too, because a lot of conversations I have when I start with clients or I'm having these men's huddles is almost like the domino effect of things. Well, I get frustrated and then this happens. And and we as men, and I find myself there, and I used to find it way more frequently in a space of just the domino effect of my day. And I'm sure we've all experienced it. I'm sure we've all have left work frustrated or left being with someone frustrated. Then we got in the car and someone cut us off and we honked and we yelled but that's the trickle effect of our emotions because we're just projecting ourselves and what we're doing onto those things. And when men start to create some awareness for themselves around how they're feeling and why they're feeling a certain way, one, they're able to proactively start to figure out what works for them that they need to do. But two, I love the point that you just made. It's really cool to sit with men, and this is a lot of work too with the one-on-one clients that I work with, is we'll sit and we'll actually look at it and just be like, okay, cool. So how were you feeling consistently throughout the week? Why were you feeling that way? And we start to put connections and they go, oh, every time I go and do this, it makes me feel this. Every time I talk to this person, it makes me, it's like now we have a space to have a conversation around, okay, well, what do you want to do? What's missing? What adjustments do you need to make? Because before that, we as men, and I've been there too, we're like, well, I don't know. I just get angry and then there goes my day. And it's really fascinating to just see the awareness critics where they're in the driver's seat and not sitting in the passenger seat anymore.
So powerful. I love that empowerment and giving that back to people. And I used to be a victim of my life and not realize that it's like, oh wait, there's actually, this isn't me, there's reasons for this. So that is huge. And just to wrap up the podcast, what brings your heart joy?
What brings my heart joy? Authentically being me every day, regardless of what people think, and just serving others in terms of just creating the space for them. Because no one's broken, no one's life is in shambles, no one is a victim. They just need the space to process through that, to realize that they're everything and they're enough. And everything that they desire is right there. They just need the space to see that. So that fills me up and gives me joy when I see people get to those moments.
Heart snuggles. That's a heart snuggle moment. Love that. And if you want to work with you, what are you offering and where can they find you?
Yeah. So if any of this resonates with you, I don't know your audience, Lexi, exactly, but if there's men, and I work with females too. A lot of this work resonates with females too, and I work with them as well. But you can go to my Instagram at Griffin Gervais. There you can see huddles that I have. I run daily huddles mostly. Like I would say there's 4 to 6 a week that are in a drop-in basis right now, completely free. So that's specifically for men. So men, hit me up if that's something that you'd want to be a part of. If you want to work with me directly, you can just go to my link tree and set up a time to have a deeper conversation with me about where you are and what you want to do. And I will say this for the first time. I haven't said this on any platform yet. I'm getting ready to announce a project that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to do any sort of group work, if you want to do any sort of work that's aligned with stepping into your freedom, be on the lookout for that. And that's going to be for men and women. So yeah,
Yay!
the best place to find me is on Instagram.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with us today. And I'm so excited for more people to experience your magic.
Of course, I appreciate you, Lexi, and thanks for having me.